The Adventures of Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain. Longman Simplifying this series. Read by Siriya Boonlert. Chapter 7 Tom and Huck Swear an Oath. The two boys flew on and on towards the village, spaceless with horror. They glanced backwards over their shoulders from time to time as if they feared that they might be followed. If we can only get to the old mine before we break down, gasped Tom. I can't bear this much longer. Huckleberry's heavy breathing was his only reply. At last they burst through the open door of the old mine and fell, grateful and exultant, in the sheltering shadows. After a time, their breathing became regular, and Tom said, Huck, what do you think will happen if Dr. Robinson dies? Redskin Joe will be hanged. Tom thought for a moment and then said, Who will tell me? What are you doing thinking about? If we do and Redskin Joe isn't hanged, why he killed us sometime or other, as sure as we lying here. If anybody tells, let Potter do it if he's foolish enough. He generally drunk enough. Tom went on thinking and then asked Huck, how can Potter tell? He doesn't know anything about it. Why doesn't he know? Potter couldn't see anything. He just been stunned when Redskin Joe stuck the doctor with his knife. That's so, Tom. After another thoughtful silence, Tom asked, Huck, are you sure that you can keep quiet about it? Tom, we must. You know that. If we tell people what we have seen, and if that Davis half-breed is comes hanging, he will drown us just as if we were a couple of cats. Now, Tom, we must swear to each other to keep our mouths shut. I agree, Huck is the best thing. Shall we just hold hands and swear that we... Oh no, that wouldn't do for this. That's good enough for ordinary thing. But they ought to be writing about a big thing like this, and but Tom highly approved of this idea. It was deep and dark and awful. The hour, the circumstance, and the surrounding suit it. He picked up a clean, fat piece of wood that lied in the moonlight, took the end of a pencil out of his pocket, got the moonlight on his work, and with his tongue between his teeth, wrote these lines. Huck, Jim, and Tom Sawyer swear that they will keep their mouths shut about this, and they will that they may drop dead in their track if they ever tell Huckleberry was filled with admirations of the East which Tom wrote, and of the super style of his language. Then Tom unrolled the trace from one of his diddles, and each boy pricked his thumb and pressed out a drop of blood, in time by pressing over and over again. Tom managed to cite the letters T and S, using the end of his little finger for a pen. Then he showed Huckleberry how to make an H and an F, and the oath was complete. They burned the piece of wood caused to be wore with some mournful ceremonies and charms, and the chains that bound their tongues were considered to be locked and their key thrown away. Then they separated. When Tom crept in at the bedroom window, the night was almost end. He undressed with excessive caution and fell asleep, congratulating himself that nobody knew of his absence. He was not aware that Sid had been awake for an hour when Tom awoke. Sid had dressed and gone. There was a late look in the light. He was startled. Why had he not been called? In a few minutes he was downstairs, feeling stiff and sleepy. The family were still at the table, but they had finished breakfast. His aunt did not blame him, but sat with downcast eyes. Tom had his breakfast in gloomy silence. After breakfast, his aunt took him aside, wept over him, and asked him how he could break her own heart. So by his bad behavior, she told him that she had given up hope of making him a good boy. This was worse than 1,000 whippings, and Tom's heart was sore. How then his body? He cried, begged for forgiveness, and promised over and over again not to misbehave. When he was finally dismissed, he felt that he had little confidence in his promise and that she had not forgiven him entirely. He felt too miserable to take his revenge against Sisos's speedy retreat through the back gate was unnecessary at school while he was being punished with Joe Harper for staying away the day before. He looked as if he did not care what happened to him. He sat down, rested his elbows on his desk and his jars in his hands, and stared at the wall with the stony stare of suffering that has reached the limit and can go on further. His elbow was pressing against some harsh substance. After a long time, he slowly and silently changed his position and took up this object with a sight. It was wrapped in paper. He unwrapped it. Aside from the very depth furrow and his heart broke, it was his brass door handle. This last straw broke and Camille's back.